Hey everyone, how's it going? So we started doing a little bit of this in class, and over the next couple of videos I'll try to break it up a little bit. We're going to go through the example that I was showing you. If you want to grab the files and follow along, you could find them under Excel 11, and we're going to be under the one called module, right? That's this one over here. We're going to be using these files. I find because we're going to be getting to them a whole bunch of times, it's probably easier if you just take this module file and copy it onto your desktop. Right? So that way you have it, it's available. I'll just put it down here so I know where it is. But that's where the files are. Okay, so let's go through and we'll start connecting it. I'm just going to repeat what we covered in class, but we're going to keep on going. I'll divide this into 3 different videos so you're able to see how we use the various power tools in Excel. Okay, so we are first going to look at what the file type is, like we talked about in class. You see that some of these files are comma separated values, and if we were to open those in a program like WordPad, Notepad, we would be able to see what exactly is in them, and we have these comma separated values. It's always a good idea to see like what the values are, because sometimes we could have values separated by another symbol or another character. So let's get started. First of all, we're going to, sorry about that. First of all, what we're going to do is we're going to open it up and we're going to grab the Revenue Excel worksheet. So on the Revenue Excel worksheet, we'll move that into here. My computer is being possessed. There we go. Press enable editing. All right. Okay. So let's go to Revenue History. And in Revenue History, we're going to put in the company's past revenue data. And you'll see right now I'm in cell A3. So I'm going to go up to the Data tab up here. I'm going to press where it says New Query. I'm going to say From File. And in this case, I'm going to grab From CSV. So we're going to locate our files. In this case, I put them onto the desktop, so they should be easy to find. It will think for a second, and where's my folder? Desktop, module, and we want the one that says Revenue History. Press OK, import, and there we go. Now this new window is going to come up, and this new window is going to show us a few different things. It will first of all tell us what our file origin encoding is, which is very important in case we're getting a file from somewhere else. It's going to break down the year, business year, revenue, units sold, and notes. It's going to set the delimiter by a comma, but it could be something else. It could be fixed with spaces, tabs, something else. So you put in whatever separates your data. Do you want it to go through all the data, which could be really slow, or just the first 200 rows? Okay. We can also tell it not to detect data types, so it won't automatically assume what they are. But in this case, we're going to go through and we're going to press Edit. Okay. So when you press Edit, you're going to see this box comes up, which is a Power Query Editor. You'll notice it has a smiley face on top, which is how you could tell that you're in the right window. Okay, this is Power Query. You'll notice that it did something called applied steps. So it applied the source, promoted the header, so that's these guys up here, and it changed the type, and it figured out what they were, right? So we have year with the 1, 2, 3, business year has the 1, 2, 3, revenue, units sold, and notes. Now, this is not what we want because we want to change this into a date, right? So we'll go to where it says transform. We're going to change it from data type from whole number. We're going to click on where it says date. Okay, it will think for a second. We're going to press, do you want to replace the existing or do you want to convert it? We could press add a new step. It will add one down here and it will change everything to dates. And it looks like that did not work whatsoever because we got 1905 dates. So let's go back one time and let's try again. Aha. Okay, but when we press on date replace current, it gives us the actual year. So we got 1995, 1998, and so on. Let's go back to home. And again, all this data right now is not in Excel. This is coming from that CSV file, which is sitting in this folder, right? So it's coming from this revenue history file. So now let's go back to close and load, and we'll press close and load to. And it's going to ask us a bunch of different questions. Do we want to put it into a table? Or do we want to create a connection to that file? right? So is the data actually going to sit inside Excel, or is it going to sit in its database, in this case, its CSV file? So we're going to say we want to move it into the table. We want to say that we want to put it into an existing worksheet. And where are we going to put it? In cell A3, which is right over here. And we're going to hit load. Okay, so what that's going to do is it's going to pull the data in, and you'll see right away it pulls up this thing called workbook queries, right? Now, the workbook queries, we can refresh them. We can also just mouse over it and it will show us a preview. And we could also remove some of the data. We could change some of the columns. Basically, to get this data, it's building a query just like you have in SQL that's going to go to this file and pull out whatever we're asking for, right? So it's going to go and grab year, business year, revenue, units sold, and so on, right? And if you're curious exactly what's going on, you can go into where it says query, and then we'll go into where it says edit, and we're going to click on where it says view, and we'll go to advanced editor. You'll notice that under advanced editor, it's going to tell you, and this is the M format, it tells you exactly, it writes the query for you of what kind of text it's supposed to pull in, what type of type it is, the encoding, how many columns, etc. Now, you don't need to look at that because as you go through and visually design which ones you want, which ones you don't want, how you want to filter it, it will do all of that. It will parse the data before it ever brings it into Excel. The advantage of that is that if you're dealing with a huge data set, it will pre-process and limit the amount of data that comes in, not to overwhelm your system. Now, if we want to change the query that we have, we could mouse over the revenue history query that we have in the sheet and just click on edit down below. Okay, so Power Query Editor is going to open up again, and we can go through and edit different things. Now, for example, in this case, let's click on units sold, this one over here, and we're going to click Control, and we'll click on Notes, these two at the end. So we got units sold, we have notes, and then we're going to go to remove columns. Okay, so I'll press remove columns. Now I only have year, business year, right, in chronological order, and revenue. So I'm going to press close and load. And you'll notice that the data now is only showing these three. If I look at the preview, it's only bringing in these three columns. What happened? It changed the query. Now if I go into my CSV file, so let's open up revenue history with our notepad, you'll notice that none of the actual data is erased, right? Excel, the new query, is only pulling in these first three pieces of information and these last pieces of information. Actually, how much do we got? We have three. So it's bringing in 1, 2, 3. So this is the first three pieces, and then this piece and this piece are just not being imported. It doesn't mean that they're erased. It just means that they're sitting in the database, in this case the CSV file, and we don't touch them, right? So this is a way that we could eliminate huge amounts of data before we bring them to active memory and potentially bog down our system. Now, if we want to see what exactly we have, we can press refresh, reload the query, and we are able to, under data, we could just hit the refresh all button, and it will go out, check the file, bring it back, and we're good. We can also hit refresh over here, right? Either way, it's going to go and say, are there any changes in the file? We can also set how often it changes, and of course we can make changes in the file itself. Like for example, instead of a CSV file, if this was a file that was being fed information off an internet form, right, or it was live streaming data, we could very easily make changes. So for example, let's change the first one to 0.98, right, and we'll just save that. Okay, let's look at the data here. It still says 1.092. I'll refresh it, and it will go check the file. It will query it according to these three columns and bring it in. Of course, I could change anything else in the file, but as long as it's outside of the query, we won't be able to see it. Okay, so let's do another example. This one's a little more involved. So here I'm going to click on Recent Revenue. I'm going to go back to A3. And to put the data in here from our external file, I'm going to hit New Query. We're going to go from File, from CSV. Okay, so we'll go back to our folder. And this time, we're going to grab the file called 2-year revenue, right? which is also a CSV file, but you'll notice that this one is a megabyte, 1.1 megabytes. And I'm going to hit import. Okay, so it's going to think for a second, and it's going to import these files. It says at the bottom, the data in the preview has been truncated due to size limits. So this is a really, really large file, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to... Okay, so the first thing we want to do is check out what data do we have. So we have an order ID, order date, order time, store, employee ID, items, revenue, sales tax, all these different fields, right? We're going to hit edit, and we'll take a look at the actual data. So our Power Query Editor is going to show up, and the first thing is it's going to tell us we have 11 columns and 999 plus rows. In fact, if we scroll down, I'm pretty sure there's like 14,000 rows, right? There's a lot of data in this one. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to order date, and we're going to click on revenue. Okay, so we have order date. We're going to go this way, and we're going to click on revenue. So they're both highlighted. And what we'll do is we're going to go down to remove columns, but this time we're going to press where it says remove other columns. Okay? So what that's going to do is it's going to only give us order date and only give us revenue, but get rid of everything else. So all of our other data is not erased, but we just don't see it anymore. Okay? So now what we're going to do is, once we're done with this, right, we're going to add a new column. So we're going to click on order date, which we got right there. And on the ribbon, we're going to click on where it says add column up here. Okay, and then in the from date and time group, we're going to press date. So we're going to go over here, and we're going to hit the date button, and then we're going to go to month, and then we're going to pick on where it says end of month over here. So what this is going to do is it's going to give us a column with the last day of this month. So 2016 January 02, the last day was here, right? We often need this when we're trying to put together what is the last day of a month, like what's captured by that month, because months have different numbers of days, right? So here we're going to right click on end of month, and we're going to go to rename, and for this one we're going to call it month, like this. Okay, now you'll notice that every time we do something, it's adding all these steps, right? It's applying all those steps to the filter. So it's basically what we've done so far is take in the source, promote the headers, change the type, remove the other columns, insert end of month, and rename columns, right? So we'll be able to go through those steps automatically every time we run the query before anything happens. And again, the code that's being generated for our query is happening in here, right? So before it actually does anything, it will go to the database, run these steps, and then pull in our data, which will limit how much stuff it's bringing in. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Transform tab up here, and we're going to group these dates. So what we're going to do is we're going to group all of these using the Group By button into these months. So you'll notice that we could have a bunch of different days, like for example, January 2nd and January 3rd are different days, but they happen within the same month, and we're going to collapse them all together. So I'm going to hit Group By, and we're going to say we want to group by month, and in the new column name, it's called count, but we're going to call this guy instead, monthly revenue. Okay, then we're going to go into the operation box, and we're going to press sum. In the column box, we're going to pick revenue. So let's look at what just happened. Basically, we're going to group by month, so it's going to go through and group by this column month. The new column name is going to be called monthly revenue. Operation is sum, add those guys all together, and what column is it adding together? That's the revenue column. All right, so we'll press OK. So now it disappears, and we get this new monthly revenue column, right? So basically for month, which is the column that we made that has the last day of each one, we now have two columns with 24 rows. So we collapse those 14,000 we got those 14,000 records into 24 rows with 2 columns, right? Much, much smaller. So we're going to hit OK, and we'll do the same thing we did before. We'll go back to home, press close and load 2, and we're going to bring it in as a table. We're going to say that we want it into an existing worksheet in A3, and then we're going to hit load. Okay, so that's going to bring our recent revenue, and the only thing that we're going to do here is just grab all this, and we're going to turn that into currency, right? Just so it's easier to read. And there we go. So far we went through and we looked at, for all the different products, for all the different years, we brought in this total amount of money by month. Okay, so now many of you know how to do trends, and that's what the next video is. We're going to take a look at trends, and then we're going to get some more into some additional database stuff, but I'm going to put that into the second video.